Hey, Janelle, thanks for meeting with me today.
Hey, Cassie. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Now, this is your first article that you wrote for MCO, is that right?
Absolutely. And I'm so thrilled at the privilege to do it.
Hmm. What inspired you to write this article?
Ah, wow. So many things. I have walked alongside of several people in their trauma and just
Yeah.
inspired with how God can bring healing to past events.
Yeah, that makes sense. How exciting. Like when
Mhm.
I when I read your title, I was like, "Oh, this is really interesting. I can't wait to find out like
Mm,
what you're going to talk about, what you
yeah.
mean by that."
Mhm.
So, one of the things that you talk about in your article is how past trauma makes it difficult for us
Mm,
to live in the present.
yeah.
How is it that past trauma makes it
Mm.
difficult for us to live in the present?
Yeah, all of our experiences, especially those trauma, those big experiences in our life that impact us, they impact how we view the world. They impact our interactions with other people. We all have triggers that bring us back to different memories. And so it's almost like we never escaped it. We're living life and we smell a certain smell or see a certain person, and suddenly we're in a state of fear or panic or anxiety. Those things follow us. And so we want to be free of those things that hold us in bondage.
Mm, that sounds so exciting to be
Hmm.
free of the things that hold us in bondage.
Yeah.
And something that you just mentioned
Hmm.
about uh, you see a certain thing or you smell a certain
Hmm.
smell. That reminds me of a question that I wanted to ask you when I read your article. You said, our body itself responds to trauma and holds on to that response as a
Mm-hmm.
protection.
Hmm.
So, leading into like the seeing and the smelling parts of our
Yeah.
body. So, like, tell us more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, there are times in our lives when we face hard things that are hard to really sink into and experience fully. And so our body just begins to maybe even shut off that emotion, that strong emotion that was present during that time, whether that's deep grief or deep anger or even sometimes joy can be suppressed. We can learn to do all of those things. And at those times and those moments of trauma, we may not have safe spaces to share those things, to go through those
Yeah.
emotions that need to be gone through. And so those defenses allow us to kind of compartmentalize even to say, I can't handle this right now, but I need to continue on in life. But our body remembers
Yeah.
those things and it might hold it
Yeah.
in a way of just tenseness, tightness in our
Mm.
chest, or just anxiety, even. And so there's lots of different ways that we learn to suppress those emotions and to protect ourselves so that we can go through and live the life that we're called to live. But it's when we reach maybe
Yeah.
adulthood or some space that's provided for us between that trauma that we can really sit down and look back at it and start to unload some of that.
Yeah. That's like, it almost feels too good to be true. Like you said, like
Mm,
that we could actually
yeah.
have an impact
Hmm.
on our past traumas in a way that give us freedom and
Mm,
hope and
mhm.
joy in
Yeah,
the future and in our present life. Like,
yeah.
that's exciting.
It's
I'm excited about
extremely
that.
exciting. Absolutely exciting. I agree, Cassie. It's just so fun. It's such a fun process to be a part of as a therapist. It's so fun to watch clients sit there and you can literally see it's like it's a visual image of just unpacking that backpack and just their load
Mm,
gets lighter. And I love some of the most wonderful moments as a therapist is just literally watching a client just be able to stand up taller, sit up taller because
yes.
that weight has been lifted. It's like they've been pulled down and dragged down from all the things in life that have weighed down heavily. But it's just such a privilege to be a part of that taking off. of that weight, that burden that we weren't meant to carry.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. Like, that's not what the Lord has for us. Like, He wants
Mm.
our freedom. He wants
Yeah.
our being
Hmm.
able to take off that and to
Yes.
step into
Yeah.
that beautiful space that He has for us.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely, Cassie. It's just such a joy to literally see it, to literally
Mm,
see that process happen, to literally see somebody sit up taller and to just breathe.
mm.
Mhm, mhm.
I know. I
Sometimes,
feel as you're saying that, I'm like,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to just breathe. Mm,
Mm. Now, in your article, like, there's this piece of like
mhm,
super excitement, like, oh, this dream, this like imagining of the places that we can go
mm,
and
mhm.
the hard things that we can get rid of.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned like it's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard work to
Yeah,
travel back into
it
those
so
spaces
is.
and to
Mm,
face that.
mhm.
And like, how do we develop the willingness to
Mm.
do that hard heart work?
Ah, develop the willingness. That's such a good question, Kathy. It's just, and I think it looks a little bit different for every person. I think it just looks like that space that I mentioned earlier, that spacing that we have
Mm,
between the trauma and where we are now. Sometimes we're not ready
mm,
yet. Sometimes we're
yeah,
not
that
ready
makes
to
sense.
dive into those things, but we have to, the way that we condition ourselves is placing ourselves in safe spaces. When you're in that
Mm,
trauma, you're not in a safe space. When you come to therapy, you're in a
that
safe
makes sense.
space. So
Yeah,
the
that
more
makes
it's
sense.
just, yeah, the more that you are surrounded and cocooned in that safe space, the more your
Mm,
body is going to be able to relax. And the more you're going to be
mm.
willing to listen and to invite and to entertain unpacking those things.
I love that.
Mm.
I love that we have control over creating a safe space for
Yeah.
ourselves.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That feels so empowering.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Cassie. It can look like so many different ways. It can be with a therapist, it could be with a
Mm,
friend, a spouse. Um, your body recognizes when you're not in a safe space. And so you running to those places that are safe is going to give you
yeah,
that ability to start to relax enough to where when you look back, you can look back and you can see that it was dangerous, but also acknowledge and know you're not in that danger.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So good.
Mm.
Let me ask what feels like maybe a complicated question, but why is going back to work on the trauma
Yeah.
better than trying to forget that it
Mm.
existed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, we don't want to um, deny ourselves or to give up the gift that God has given us and to live life to its fullest.
Mm,
When we're living under a burden and we're living just with that weight, even our responses to others are not going to be accurate. They're not going to be
mm.
um, true. And they're probably not gonna be
Yeah.
what we want them to be. We want to be able to
Yes.
see clearly, right? We don't wanna walk
I have
around and stumble
experienced
in the
that
dark.
in my
Yes.
life.
Me too, Cassie.
Like, oh,
Yes.
why did that? I opened my mouth and that came out. I don't want
Yeah.
that to come out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think about marriages, right? If you want to live life to your fullest with your spouse and your marriage, you don't want your past trauma to enter your marriage. You know,
Yeah.
you want to see your spouse for who they are, not through the eyes of trauma, not through the eyes of what's been done to you before. We can
Yeah.
interpret even just how our children respond to us, how our coworkers respond to us. All of that is filtered through the lens of our experiences. So if we don't go
Mm.
back and allow healing through those experiences, we don't know how we're presenting ourselves towards others. We don't know how we're showing up in the room with other people. We don't know why some people might be reproached when we come across them. It could be because that trauma is seeping out and we're being triggered. And so we're responding out of that triggered state.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
totally reminds me of the experiences of like, I came into this place and something happened, and I really don't understand why I immediately felt this way or
Yeah.
did this thing or
Mhm.
went and hid somewhere instead of facing what was going on,
Yeah.
whatever the case might be.
Mhm. Mhm.
But there's actually opportunity to go back into those
Yeah.
spaces where that
Mm.
that wound happened and to
Yeah.
be able to make sense of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to undo our aloneness in it. You know, when we have a
Mm,
therapist come alongside of us and is there to carry the weight of that experience, and that shared
yeah.
experience just helps that trauma to subside. And it's just so freeing. We want to live in that freedom and to be free to soar and to accomplish those things that God has set before us to accomplish.
Mm.
There's actually a literal just, mental block in our lives, in our minds when we have unresolved trauma. And so we're literally not able to think clearly.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned about the body, like it's literally in the
Yeah.
wiring of the
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
It's
wild.
wild. It's absolutely wild. Yeah.
It's amazing.
I love that we have
And
the same word for
yay,
that.
yes, and yay neuroplasticity
Yeah.
that that can go in and be
Mm,
rewired.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree, Cassie.
Mm,
It excites me so much just to see that process, to have had that process happen, to just, that's such a gift. It's such a gift. So why wouldn't you want to go
yes.
back and redo it?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think of it like when you get a taste for something that's really good.
Yes. Mhm.
And then you realize, oh, that was that was worth the effort.
Yeah.
Like what's on the other side is
Mm,
worth the hard work.
absolutely. I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and that tension in your body just reminds me of just going to a masseuse and getting massage, and that
Mm.
pain is not pleasant, right? But
Yes, so
our
true.
mind knows and understands that that pain is temporary and there's relief
Yeah,
on the other side of that. And that's what it's like to
yeah,
go back and revisit and to work through those issues and to understand why am I reacting and responding? What are these triggers all about? Have a greater understanding and to share your experiences with somebody else. It's just kind of like going in and
yeah.
massaging it out. And then there's relief. There's emotional relief. There's physical relief, even
Yes.
spiritual relief. Yeah. Mm, so good, Cassie. Oh,
Mm.
it just makes me
It's really
excited.
exciting. I know. We're both
Yes.
like giddy thinking about it. Well, I love it.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
loved meeting with you and talking
Mm,
through your article. And thanks for writing about this. And thanks for giving this glimmer of hope. It's really
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for letting me share this piece, and ah, it's amazing.
All right. I'll see you in the next one.
All right. See you then.